Legend of Total War here, and today I want to go over some Reddit posts, which I think there's some really healthy discussion going on around the development cycle of Total War Warhammer. I've obviously been on the side that Total War Warhammer development has been pretty slow with Warhammer 3, and I think a lot of you guys feel that way as well. But, you will get some people, defending the multi-million-dollar company. You got to defend them at all costs, and come out to give their points. But I think a lot of these points are actually pretty well reasoned, so I'm going to go through some of them and just present them and let you know what I think is a strong point or what is a weak point, and let you know my thoughts, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Okay, so looking at this image here, so he's done a visual representation of the different DLCs from Warhammer 1, 2, and 3. It's a bit weird. There's no way you're going to make it exactly from like to like, because you've got like an early DLC for Warhammer 1, and arguably probably one of the worst DLCs for Warhammer 1. Then you've got, not the worst, but one of. Then you've got Silence and the Fury, one of the best DLCs for Warhammer 3. Not the best. Sorry, Warhammer 2, my god. And then you've got Omens of Destruction, which was the most recent one. So it's a bit all over the place with that. Another thing is the time between DLCs was about the same with these ones here. It's roughly around 6 months in between DLC. Obviously slowed down a fair bit when COVID hit in 2020 and 2021. And then they sort of picked the pace up again at the sort of back end of 2023, and then it feels like they're slowing down a fair bit now. Another thing to keep in mind of why it might feel like it's being quite slow is something I like to call franchise fatigue. Now, everybody has a different rate at which they'll experience franchise fatigue, and loads of things can take into consideration for these factors. Usually, if a franchise is fumbled in any sort of way, that'll contribute to fatigue. And obviously, Warhammer 3 has had more fumbles than Warhammer 1 and 2 basically combined. I feel like with Warhammer 1, it kind of launched being like, meh, just wasn't that big of a deal, and then sort of had some pretty good moments in its development. And then with Warhammer 2, meh, sort of launch, and then really hit its stride with the Tomb King DLC. And just went from strength to strength, and with a couple of bumps on the road. Whereas Warhammer 3 fumbled the launch to a ridiculous degree, did all right with Immortal Empire's launch, did pretty good with the Forge of the Chaos Wolves, absolutely fumbled it with Shadows of Change, absolutely ridiculously bad. Probably the worst handling of a DLC we've ever seen from Creative Assembly. Somewhat, I mean, it's such a low bar to go to anyway. And then doing amazingly well again with Thrones of Decay, and then kind of, I wouldn't say they dropped the ball with Omens of Destruction, but they definitely didn't exceed expectations with that one. So it's just really all over the place. The consistency just isn't there. And so I think that roller coaster ride of emotion can really add to fatigue. So just using some other examples, really long-running franchises, like, for example, the Marvel movies, the MCU. I mean, I think that the franchise fatigue really hit hard right after Endgame, after 2019. Like, how many people just sort of lost interest in the Marvel movies? It's the same sort of thing with maybe Star Wars. Star Wars, I imagine a lot of you have probably experienced franchise fatigue with it. It's just so much Star Wars, and most of it is shit. Not all of it, but a lot of it's shit. And so even when they release something that's actually good, like, for example, I've heard really good things about the show Andor, but I have franchise fatigue with Star Wars. I haven't watched it because I don't care about Star Wars that much anymore. I need like a break from the roller coaster ride of emotions. And I feel like that's happened a fair bit with Total War Warhammer. That even if they're making some really good stuff and they've got some really good things planned, because it's been such a roller coaster ride of emotions, you sort of get exhausted with it. Be like, I'm not getting on this roller coaster again. This is exhausting. I'm just going to wait and see how things go. This feels really slow. So I think that is happening a fair bit. And now another thing that happened in Warhammer 1 and 2 that isn't happening in Warhammer 3 is Creative Assembly community engagement. Now, maybe on the Creative Assembly or the Total War Discord, they're a bit more engaged. But in terms of YouTube, on social media in general, they're nowhere near as engaged as they used to be. Like during Warhammer 1, especially during Warhammer 2, I remember Tom and Wheels would come on and call Arch Warhammer a dickhead. No, apart from that, they would come on just like play the game, and it was really good. Like I would go on to just be in the comments of their live stream, and they would acknowledge me. It was just like back and forth banter, and it was just fun community interactions, and that would happen in between DLC. And so that interaction was quite good, I think. And because Creative Assembly has basically no community interactions whatsoever, basically every post of Creative Assembly is fucking an ad now. It's just marketing. Every step of it is just marketing. It's like, post, Total War is now on sale, or buy Empire Total War on mobile. That's all the posts basically summarize. Or here's some titty snakes that we're going to sell you soon. There's no real social interaction with the company. There's no human face to it anymore. Whereas they had that before, it's completely gone now. And I think that contributes to a level of exhaustion. Now, another thing that I think contributes to exhaustion with Warhammer 3 specifically is the length of time it takes to play a campaign before a person loses interest. Now, it might just be because the game is old, like, because you got to consider that Total Warhammer 1, 2, and 3 kind of all the same game. So that means that when Warhammer 1 came out, it was only like 1 year old. Then it was only between like 2 and 5 years old. And then it's now like 5 and 9 years old now. So it just gets old. Because, you know, a lot of the older Legendary Lords that have been around for a long time, they've had some reworks, fundamentally still feel somewhat the same in many cases. But another thing is that during Warhammer 2 in particular, I'm just speaking from my own personal experience here, whenever I played a campaign, I would almost always play it to like turn 100, almost always, and really enjoy the whole way through, because it felt like the game just sort of naturally built up these big empires, and you would have the Order Tide or the Chaos Tide coming up against you at the end of it, and it felt satisfying to go up against them. And it felt like the game wasn't won until way later in the campaign. Whereas in Warhammer 3, it doesn't feel that way. I usually, around turn 30 or 40, I go, okay, there is no way I'm going to encounter any real challenge from here. It's just done. And so I end my campaigns a lot sooner in Warhammer 3. Now, what effect that has, for me personally, is that with Warhammer 2, if I'm spending 100 turns on any one of these characters, that means I'm getting more time playing them before I get tired of it. And in Warhammer 3, I'm spending less time playing them before I get tired of them. Meaning that even though there's more characters in Warhammer 3, you can go through them and get tired of the game faster in Warhammer 3 than you would in Warhammer 2, because you would play each of these for longer. So I think that actually has a big contributing factor to it. Now, there's obviously some people that will play to to turn 500 in these particular campaigns as well. I'm obviously talking about my personal experience, but I've also heard from you guys that a lot of you had much longer campaigns and more satisfying campaigns in Warhammer 2 than in Warhammer 3. I do think that in terms of core gameplay, Warhammer 2 was peak, but where Warhammer 3 sort of compensates for it is the quality of life features, such as item fusing and much better diplomacy, and like quick deals, and just more content. Obviously, there's lots more content in Warhammer 3 than there is in Warhammer 2. And so that sort of compensates them for that, I think. So yeah, looking at all of this stuff here, I think that just doing content counting isn't really helpful in terms of getting people to not feel like it's coming slow. I think it comes down to how much gameplay is each piece of content actually providing you. When you're adding new Legendary Lords, even if you're adding no additional units whatsoever, you get an additional whole campaign to play. And if it's in Warhammer 2, maybe that's 100 turns. If it's in Warhammer 3, maybe it's only 30, 40 turns. Who knows? But that being said, with Taurox, that would mean 10 turns for the whole campaign. But still, each turn lasted many, many hours. Bit of an outlier with that one. But that being said, Skulltaker's the exact same problem. His turns lasted me for bloody ever because of how much you can get done in a single turn. Same sort of thing with Golg to a degree. But anyway, those are outliers, I suppose. So when adding in a lot of this like content here, there's so much more here. It's not really more when adding in like a unit of Regiment of Renown. It doesn't really provide a lot of gameplay. It's the Legendary Lords. Those are the ones that add the most. Then obviously the regular generic Lords, they add a bit. Legendary Heroes add a little bit as well. And obviously we do get more with this one, but it is much less frequent than what we're getting in Warhammer 2, and also I think people are playing the campaigns a lot less. But whether or not the campaign is being played less because the game is old or because Warhammer 3 is fundamentally easier, hard to say. It could be a bit of both, not just any one thing. So I think that doing this sort of visual representation here to just make this a lot more vertical than the other ones, I don't think that is an accurate representation of why people feel exhausted with the game. Because, I'll just be honest, like these legendary heroes, they didn't really add much gameplay at all for me personally. It's all about the legendary lords, but that's just me. I don't know how you play a campaign centered around a legendary hero. Anyway, so that's that post there. I thought this was a good idea. Also, they missed out on a race rework here with FLC. So with the dwarves, they had a minor rework with this one. Okay, so let's come over to here and look at this post. So this one here, this is like the opposite. I'm at the forefront of fighting misinformation. So this one is the opposite, showing how much content they were doing back in 2018, and then sort of kind of misrepresenting CA a little bit here, not being very generous to them, which I'm not. I don't really care, to be honest. But yeah, if we have a look at, was it 2018, there were 3 DLCs that came out. Rise of the Tomb King. So you had 2 race packs come out that both had 4 legendary lords. And then you've got the Queen, the Crone. So that's 10 legendary lords right there. And then there's the FLC. You've got Tretch, you've got Alithanar, and you got Lokir Felhart. So 13 legendary lords that came out in 2018. Oh, there was another thing that I wanted to bring out here. Another thing that I think a lot of people don't take into consideration is that in Warhammer 1, right, they don't have a whole lot of assets that they've already developed. Warhammer 3, right, they've already developed loads and loads of assets, and they can actually retexture a lot of assets to just like cut production costs, which I have no problem with them doing, but it would significantly reduce the amount of time needed to make something. So when we look at a particular unit down here, this is like a key example of, I can't point out every single one of them, but if we take the Slaughter Brute, for example, the model of that one is exactly the same as the Kadai Destroyer. So they just took the Kadai Destroyer and its animations and everything, obviously changed its stats a little bit, and changed its visuals by retexturing it. Also, I like to call it reskinning. And it's basically they're identical units. If you put them side by side next to each other and walk them and had them fight, they'll just use the exact same animations, the exact same one, the same unit basically. So they can save on production costs. I don't have any problem doing that, but yeah, as they continue to make new skeletons, they are able to reuse existing skeletons. So I think, so for example, that is just Carrion. They've got monster infantry already sorted. I'm fairly sure that the Thunder Tusk is a reskinned unit as well. I think it might just be a bigger version of the Stonehorn, but I'm not 100% sure on that one because it's a bit more complex. There's also got like a ballista, like a catapult on the back of it as well. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things that, like this one over here, it's actually a DLC unit. It's just a Black Orc unit. So, saying that this is adding in a new unit, is it really? No, it's not really adding in a new unit. Whereas, weren't these 2 here actually new units? And wasn't the Bolt Thrower here? That was the actual first version of the Bolt Thrower. Those ones there were probably just, they were already, that could be like Quarrel or just reskinned to some degree. And there was some really good stuff in this DLC as well, because they had to do whole new models for like the Jabba Slice. That's a whole Charlemagne right there. But yeah, I think we see a lot less of like new models added in here. There definitely are some. I'm not saying there are none, but there's less of it in these ones here. If you're gonna bother counting content, which I don't think you should bother doing. So it should theoretically get quicker for them to actually make these DLCs because they're able to reuse a lot of assets. But that's not seemingly what's been happening. Okay, so back to this one here again. So yeah, loads and loads of updates, and so it's not like with Warhammer 3, it's new to get an FLC character that's not tied to a DLC. So for example, in Warhammer 2, Rakath was not tied to anything. It's just basically you just got him as a free legendary lord. And usually during a Skulls event, in the past, at least for Warhammer 3, you would get FLC hero. So I think with 2023, nobody got anything because 2022 sucked. You didn't get anything. But 2023, I think you got Harold Hammerstorm, and then 2024 was Karanak. Those were the Skulls events that were added in as legendary heroes. And then for this Skulls event, there's no legendary hero or legendary lord. There's two units that are both just retextured units, so it's not actually new units. I don't really care that much about it, but it's definitely less than what you've been getting. There's no doubt about that. Look, this is one. Unlike past Skulls events, this year we haven't released a free Legendary Lord. Well, they didn't do it in past Skulls events either. I think they meant Legendary Hero, as they shifted our priorities over the past year to introduce more free content through our game updates, but we didn't want you to think we'd forgotten about you all the same. 6.2 is not far beyond the horizon, bringing with it Blood Knight, Sword and Shield, Hobgoblin, Bolt Thrower. Yeah, so there's already multiple Bolt Thrower units in the game. So first Bolt Thrower was added in right here, back in 2016? 17? 16, I think. There's the first iteration of the Bolt Thrower. Now which has been updated, and then the Greenskins got it with the Goblin Bolt Thrower, and now we've got an entirely new unit. I'll get to that in a minute. Entirely new unit, the Hobgoblin Bolt Thrower, completely new unit, by the way. It's just Goblin, except it's Hobgoblin, so it's completely different. So what is this? This would be for the Chaos Dwarfs, I imagine, because they're the ones that get Hobgoblins. I mean, if it was Noblars, then it would be for the Ogres. So yeah, I think that's for the Chaos Dwarfs. And Blood Knight, Sword and Shield, well, that's obviously for the Tomb Kings, right? No, I'm just kidding. So that'd be I imagine, just for the Vampire accounts. I can't imagine that would be for the Vampire Coast. But yeah, two iterations of the Blood Knights now. You've got the regular Blood Knights and the Sword and Shield. Woo! And, it's not like the Vampire accounts didn't already have anti-infantry cavalry with the Black Knights. They already had that. So whatever. It's not like it's bad, but in terms of how much value that provides as opposed to, say, Karanak or Harold Hammerstorm, this is a hell of a lot less. And also, with 6.1, of course, you had the race rework for Kislev, which was pretty good, which also came with additional units. And 6.2 is going to be focused on just like updating items, ancillaries. So not as good as a rework, especially considering Rich Aldridge a little while back said that, don't worry, we're thinking about doing a Bretonnia rework. This is probably why they don't want to reveal too much in these videos. Because they say something and we go, yes, they're planning on it. They're gonna do it. Bretonnia rework, and then they go, well, nah, we just said that out of our ass. We're not gonna do it. It's just like Northern expansion for Three Kingdoms. Oh, future of Three Kingdoms happens. So it can be a bit frustrating. This is why I've always said, take everything the Creative Assembly says with a pinch of salt. If they say anything that they're planning in these videos, it doesn't mean that they're definitely going to do it. And I think the big problems that the Creative Assembly has, and I've addressed this before, is that when they've changed their mind, they don't let you know. Like, they're not going to say, oh, I know we said that we were planning a Bretonnia update, but that's no longer on the cards. They're not going to say that. They're going to let you Bretonnia fans linger all the way through, and you end up getting nothing. Maybe. Because back in Warhammer 2, they said Toddy would have his day, and then they've said nothing since then. I had no idea that it was possibly coming for the End Times DLC. Maybe, who knows? But they've said nothing about it since then. They said that Thanquol would eventually come as well, but then they've said nothing since then. So then they just sort of pretend like nothing's happening. I don't know. Alright, moving on to the next one. So I just like that CA step up their patch process and we get big updates without DLC now. So we got Reddit saying here, hate you and hope you die at the people that are being patient for it. Again, I think it comes down to this, a big difference. These people here are probably people that have got franchise fatigue, that may have been around since Total War Warhammer 1. And maybe these ones have not been around quite as long, and therefore are still getting through a lot of the old content and haven't yet hit that fatigue stage. But I think this is definitely an exaggeration, and you will get it both ways. You will get toxic elements of it both ways. Not a big deal. It's always going to happen. But yeah, interesting to see. This is where you get people arguing against the other side rather than discussing the actual issue, using I guess hyperbole with this kind of stuff. So this one here I don't think is as helpful as the others because it's not really there's nothing wrong with this statement. If you're like, I can wait longer for DLC, that's cool. Then just wait longer for DLC. You don't even need to say it. But the people who are frustrated with the pace, why can't they say it? It just feels like if somebody says something that will have absolutely no impact on you whatsoever, but you don't you don't agree with it. It's like, well, I have to say something about it. I don't know. It's just a bit weird. Anyway, so then there's this other post here. NGL, I kind of hate how many times we have to remind people that CA can only add things to Total War that Games Workshop allows them to add. Yeah, that is completely true. I mean, hear this all the time. Oh my god, I can't wait for Creative Assembly to add Kuresh. I can't believe Creative Assembly's not going to add Kuresh. Yeah, fuck Creative Assembly, they're not going to add Kuresh. It's really not Creative Assembly's decision to do that kind of stuff. So I believe the original plan for Total War Warhammer 3 was only going to be the 4 Chaos Gods, initially. And that because of the success of Warhammer 2, Creative Assembly was able to convince Games Workshop to create whole new lore for Kislev and Cathay. Again, due to the success of Warhammer 2. That's from my understanding of it. Now, unfortunately, because Warhammer 3 has had so many fumbles, it seems as though Creative Assembly isn't going to be able to convince Games Workshop to add in Ind, Kuresh, and Araby and all of those, because things just haven't gone fantastically well for Warhammer 3. It's had good moments, had bad moments. Like I said, it's been a roller coaster, and so I think Games Workshop just move on to the big money maker. Move on to for 40k. We're end times. Let's blow up this world. Move on to the next one. Basically, after 9 years of 9 years of milking an exhausted Warhammer Fantasy fan base, they're ready to go and milk the next fan base, and even more gullible, more gullible, money-soaked fan base, the Warhammer 40k community. Games Workshop and Creative Assembly are now just getting their milking gloves ready to just get onto those teats and be like, just get right onto those Warhammer 40k fans. Now, maybe a bit too much there, a bit too much information, but that's what I imagine is probably happening. Anyway, so, but yeah, this guy is totally right. There's no point arguing to Creative Assembly, please add Nippon. Mods, I guess, can do it. And if you're going to argue that point, direct it at Games Workshop. They're the ones that have the final say on it. But at the end of the day, it's probably going to be down to the popularity of Total War Warhammer 3 and how many projected sales it can make from that, and also how much work is required in giving it new lore and whatever, and I really doubt that anyone's going to be able to convince them. A petition isn't going to work with any of this kind of stuff. It's just, I think that might be a lost cause, which is a shame. I would have liked to have seen these obscure factions shown up in the game, but I am hitting franchise fatigue as well, and I don't know how much longer I can continue playing the same bloody campaigns I've already played before over and over again. It is getting a bit tiresome. There's nothing wrong with hitting franchise fatigue. Like I said, it's a natural part of everything. I've had franchise fatigue. I've got franchise fatigue with fucking Star Wars and with Marvel movies. And, I loved both of those at various intervals. And, I've loved Warhammer for the majority of the time. Not all of it, but the majority of the time. But I got fatigue with it now. I'm ready for 40k. I'm ready for it. Because I, got into Space Marine. Love it. I'm ready for some 40k. Anyway, moving on. So next one, not the one to be easily disappointed, but 2 existing units reskins instead of the usual FSE is a bit of an L for the Skulls event. Yeah, so just adding more onto this, and I totally agree. It is an L for it, but I think it is largely due to the fact that the main team has been shifted off in between the development of Omens of Destruction, which did seem like it was mostly under the control of Horsham, and Tides of Torment. They really should have called it Tides. They should have had something. It shouldn't be of Torment. It should have been something that started with I, like Tides I Torment, because that way it would have been Tit. That instead of it's Tot, it should have been Tit. I can't believe they missed that opportunity. I don't know what they should have connected it with. Tides is Torment. No, I don't think that works. But they should have done something to make that work. Then it could have been Tit. That would have been hilarious. Anyway, I'm getting a complete tangent there. But yeah, I think it's just due to, CA Sophia have got to get used to basically all the spaghetti code in Total War Warhammer, and they've just sort of been fresh off of Pharaoh, and it's quite possible that the pace will pick up maybe for the next one, maybe, but this is the pace that I would expect when you assign it to a new team, because this is another thing to keep in mind as well. When Warhammer 3 first came out, there was a huge wait before anything happened because the main team, the actual people that made the game, handed it off to the DLC team. So the DLC team got this fucking broken-ass, pathetically programmed game and be like, well, how the fuck are we supposed to fix this and get Immortal Empires out within 1 month? And so it took them, like, it came out in February and it was like September before Immortal Empires and Champions of Chaos came in. And then, of course, they really picked up the pace. So with a new team, you just got to give them a bit of time to sort things out. I really don't think that the Skulls event is an important thing for them to have slam dunked on. But it would have been good. But yeah, they need some time to get organized. Then this one here. While the price of the DLC for Warhammer 3 is... Sorry, pace. While the pace of the DLC for Warhammer 3 is way too slow, the doom and gloom surrounding the game is embarrassing and frankly unwarranted. So I don't think it's like doom and gloom. I think... Look... I think it is actually warranted, because if you've been a fan of Total War for, let's just say 10 years, let's give it 6 years, all right? We've seen things in the past 6 years. Do I need to remind you what happened to Three Kingdoms, which was unceremoniously shot out the back, right? Fumbled. It's actually a really good launch, and then they fumbled the DLC a fair bit, ups and downs, and then unceremoniously shot it, and never went back to it either. You know, they canned Three Kingdoms 2, but they've never gone back to Three Kingdoms. Which, by the way, Three Kingdoms is to this day still the most played historical Total War game, if you even consider it a historical Total War game. Some people don't, and they have had history of going back to older games and making DLC. Rome 2. So Rome 2's history, this is the thing, this is why it's important to understand this stuff. If you understand the history of Creative Assembly, you know absolutely what they could do. You can actually kind of predict what they're going to do based on their past actions with some degree of margin for error. So with Rome 2, for example, it had its DLC and then it usually finishes and then the next game comes out. So that would be Total War Attila. So Total War Attila had its DLC, it wasn't quite as popular. And then after they were finished making Attila DLC, they actually went back and made a couple more Rome 2 DLC because Rome 2's player count was way higher than Total War Attila. So it is entirely possible to expect that they could go back and make Three Kingdoms DLC, that they could continue making Warhammer 3 DLC after 40k, or they could take it out the back and unceremoniously shoot it the moment that 40k comes out, because Warhammer Fantasy is like this exhausted cash cow that they have milked and fucked around with and not really taken care of that well, and they'll be like, they've got this nice, fresh, fat fucking cash cow ready to be milked and abused. People that are just not familiar with Creative Assembly's history of bullshit. You know, it's gonna fucking suck having to educate a whole new generation of like slop consuming fucking Warhammer 40k fans. I have to teach them about Creative Assembly and their bullshit. It's gonna be so fucking fun. I might just not even bother. just be around, just let them figure it out for themselves. I don't know. Problem for another time. Anyway, let's go through some of the stuff here. So I don't know why it was this video in particular that triggered the wave of Warhammer 3 will be cancelled soon, Doom posting, but seriously, get some perspective. Again, understand the history of Total War, and there's your perspective. Everything that people are saying about it sort of coming to an end, like, they've taken the main team off it, and they've given it to CA Sophia. That means that that doesn't mean like they think it's going to be shit. Basically, they're not investing as much money because the staff at CA Sophia, I think they get paid like 1/5 the amount that the Horsham team do. And what this is indicating is that the next game is gearing up, and that they're all hands on deck for that one. They're no longer investing as much time and energy into Total War Warhammer 3, getting ready for the next big thing, right? So first misconception, Warhammer 40k comes out next year and then we'll stop getting DLC. Warhammer 40k is likely at some point in the future, but not confirmed. It's not confirmed. That's absolutely true. We don't know 100%. But if I had to put a bet on it, I would say it's like 95%. I've been 95% sure about something before and been wrong. You know, the next Total War game is actually Total War Troy 3, you know, something like that. If that is the case, then yeah, we got some more years of Warhammer 3 going. But I really don't think that's what is the case. All signs do point to Warhammer 40k at this point. There is no guarantee that Warhammer 40k is the next game. I mean, this is kind of a redundant point, but whatever. Even if it is, there's no reason to believe that it will be automatically replace Warhammer 3. In fact, Games Workshop directly benefits from running both games simultaneously, and outsourcing Warhammer 3 to Sophia ensures that it can run on the back burner for several years, even if the glacial play sucks. Okay, so there's something you got to consider here. Each fan base is not like solely dedicated to one fan base, right? As I've said throughout this video here, I'm fans of multiple different franchises, right? And I imagine many of you guys are as well. And it is actually more likely that if you're a fan of fantasy, I'd say that there's a decent chance you're also a 40k fan as well, or you could be a 40k fan. How many of you guys that play Total or have played Total War Warhammer were actually not originally Warhammer fans at all? Because that's me. I have never been into buying plastic and doing the tabletop. Never. I was never interested in it at all. Still not really interested in it, to be honest. And I'm only interested in Total War Warhammer because it's Total War. And then by extension became interested in the lore of Warhammer, but I'm still not interested in buying plastic crap from Games Workshop, but I do really appreciate the lore now. So how many people that are playing Total War Warhammer right now, things like, it varies obviously from day to day, but let's just say like 20,000 concurrents, 30,000 varies. How many of those people are currently fans of Warhammer 40k or could be fans of Warhammer 40k? That's the big question here. Now, if I had to guess, I'd say it's about 80%. There will be about 20% of people that will not leave Total War Warhammer 3 when Warhammer 40k comes out. They're just not interested in 40k. They're going to stick with Warhammer 3. Now, if that's the case, the player count loses 80% of it. You can also assume that any DLCs that they make after Warhammer 40k is probably not going to be the top priority of people. Like if they release a Bretonnia DLC, for example, they're probably not going to do this, after Warhammer 40k comes out, and the player count has dropped down to like 5,000 people, I don't imagine that's going to sell particularly well. You could definitely argue that that they can keep CA Sophia on it at the back burner for several years. But here's another thing to keep in mind as well, something called opportunity cost. Would it be better to have CA Sophia basically keeping a essentially dead game on life support? Or would it be better for CA Sophia to actually have their own project and make another Pharaoh game? I'm not saying Pharaoh specifically, but what if they were to work on another side project? Work on a whole new game as opposed to just pumping out DLC that 80% of people have lost interest in. So it's about priority shifting. The people at CA Sophia, they can't work on multiple projects at a time, I imagine. And it's what's going to be the most profitable for Creative Assembly. It's not a case of, they're making some profit and then therefore they'll just keep doing it. That's just not how corporations work. And we're immediately going to get into this whole, Legends being a shill, making excuses for Creative Assembly. I'm just explaining how fucking business works, man. If you don't understand this, that's your problem. Businesses, you can't do everything, right? You just can't do everything. So what you do is you look at what you can do and assess which of these projects is going to make the most money. And then you throw the other ones away and go, I'm going to work on these because they're going to make the most money. So right at the moment, Warhammer 3 is still in that this is what we're going to make the most money category. But as soon as 40k comes out, it's probably going to move into the probably not going to make as much money. And they're going to shift CA Sophia onto something more productive, like Pharaoh 3 or Hyenas 2 or something like that. Some other silly project. Who knows? Who knows? I'm, of course, joking. I do hope whatever they work on is going to be a smash hit. But I can't guarantee that is what's going to happen. But yeah, I'd be very surprised if that is what is going to happen. I think what's happening with Warhammer 3 at the moment is that because of what happened with Hyenas, Creative Assembly is in a pretty big fucking hole at the moment. Hyenas, a lot of people don't talk about Hyenas, but you really should. You are going to pay for Hyenas, as long as you pay for Total War games, basically. Total War is going to pay for Hyenas for the next decade, because Creative Assembly, while it wasn't their money, right? They got the money from Sega. Do you think Sega is going to fucking let them off the hook for Hyenas? They are going to, they might put a public statement saying this isn't true, but I will not fucking believe it. Because do you think that Sega, a money-grubbing Japanese company, right? Nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying they are. Do you think that they're going to let Creative Assembly, one of their assets, okay, it's an asset for them, do you think they're going to let them off the hook of $100 million? Creative Assembly owes Sega that money back, so they're going to have to find a way to make that cash, and Sega is going to make them do it. They don't have any room for, let's just keep the community of this dead game alive or any of that kind of shit. They're just not going to behave that way. It's going to be, we need to move from cash cow to cash cow, and we need to find sources of revenue as quickly as we can. Or else Sega will just fucking liquidate them, and they absolutely can. They can fucking liquidate the entire company. Creative Assembly, I don't think people realize how lucky Creative Assembly is to even still be in existence after the fuck up of 2023. They are lucky to still be in existence. Other companies have made smaller mistakes and have been completely axed by their publishers. Creative Assembly is on fucking thin ice. So yeah, they need to be getting 40k kind of things out all the damn time. So you've got to understand the reality of the situation, and so understanding the history of what's happened with Creative Assembly. They have a gun pointed at their head right now, and they're not going to give a shit about whatever players are left playing Warhammer 3 once 40k comes out. Assuming 40k is good, there's always a possibility that 40k is absolute dog shit, in which, look, if 40k is dog shit, that is the end of Creative Assembly. I guarantee you, 40k flops, Sega will take them out the back and metaphorically put a bullet in their head, and that'll just be the end of Creative Assembly. This is their last fucking chance, I guarantee it. But I just don't think that is what's going to happen. But if it does happen, that's the end of Creative Assembly. Boom, just gone. And then you can forget about support for Warhammer 3. Support for Warhammer 3 will then just be mods. And then Sega will then directly own Total War, and we'll just basically leave it on up to the modders to fix it, if that is what's going to happen. I hope that isn't what's going to happen. But yeah, we just got to be aware of the possibilities with this. Like, Creative Assembly are like Ubisoft right now. They're in the absolute shit. There's no room for this kind of stuff anyway. Second misconception. CA has no more financial incentive to keep the game running. The next big title will make it obsolete. This is false. The player base is stable. Yeah, it's stable at the moment. They haven't released anything new. Look, if Creative Assembly releases Pharaoh 3, then don't worry about Warhammer 3. It's fine. But if they release 40k and it's a smash hit, hard to say, then like I said, Warhammer 3's player count is gonna go down the shithole, because that's exactly what happened with Warhammer 2. Like, Warhammer 2's player base was stable. There's no reason to think that it wouldn't remain stable when Warhammer 3 comes out. Yeah, right, it fucking died in the ass almost straight away, and then it revived because Warhammer 3 was shit, and then it went back down again when Immortal Empires came back out. So, it depends. I mean, Warhammer 3's launch was very bad. Also, another thing to keep in mind as well with Three Kingdoms. Three Kingdoms came out, was a smash hit, but I think that Total War Warhammer 2 was actually in a better state as a game, and actually drew a lot of people from Three Kingdoms onto Warhammer 2, and that might have had something to do with why I'm really reaching with that one. Hard to say. And then this one here. Third misconception: we have so much stuff left, CA can never do it all. That is technically true in the sense that if you can do 100 lore packs with obscure RPG and novel content, CA is constrained by a tabletop game. However, the DLC level tabletop content is rapidly running out apart from big pool of named characters. Yeah, this is basically all they've got left. Short of, like, I don't know, adding in Volton maybe? I don't know. I don't know if they can do that. But yeah, basically these are the two big ones. So basically, these are the they will not end Total War Warhammer 3 without these two. I've heard no indication that they're not coming. They're definitely coming, right? Because that's money. That's what they're going to want. I'd say Neferata is likely. I'd say Monkey King is still likely to come. I have no idea about these. We saw a leak, but I'd say go either way with that. But I don't disbelieve it, but I don't believe it directly. Same sort of thing with Dogs of War. I just don't know about that one. But yeah, I'd say Monkey King, Neferata are like 80% likely, whereas these two I'm like 95% sure that they're on the way. But once that's done, what have they got left? Obscure name characters. It's not gonna sell as well for them. And with 40k out, and they're being able to sell every fucking individual Astartes chapter for $40 or whatever, and then having the 40k community go, but guys, it's just the price of 2 pizzas. It's fine. Oh my god, I'm not looking forward to this shit show that's coming. It's fine, we can buy one Astartes chapter for $40. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Yeah, I don't think they're going to give a shit about this if they're able to like tap into that basically unlimited money pool. They're just not going to give a shit about this anymore. Many people say that Total War Warhammer killed historical Total War games, and in many ways you're right. And just as that happened, you could easily say Total War Warhammer 40k is going to kill Warhammer Fantasy. Very, very much easier. End times will kill it, but anyway. But yeah, so I think there's some good points in here for sure, but some of these misconceptions are actually misconceptions. Anyway, so this one here, that latest video, oof. I'm usually glued to the screen for these videos, but this one was rough to get through. Little information about the DLC, a bunch of this is hard to do comments. Yeah, this is something, like I'm guilty of this as well. Just about every streamer is, my job is hard. Everybody's job is hard. So nobody gives a shit about this is hard. I completely understand that. And like, just referencing myself for something, I've definitely said, oh no, streaming's hard. Streaming isn't hard. Let me just get that out of the way. It's hard for an individual if you don't want to be there. Much in the same way that it's hard to eat when you're full, you know, but when you're hungry, then it's easy to eat. I don't know if that's a great example. So, I think what they should be saying, I mean, I don't think English is their first language with CA Sophia. One better language that they could use is like, this is time consuming to do. That I think that will fall a bit harder because this is hard. Everybody's job's hard. Just nobody cares with that. But saying it's time consuming, I think people will be more forgiving with that. Anyway, it seems like they're scaling back pantry works, no release date set, way too much talking about the making of the DLC without showing me anything significant. 3, unless I miscounted, pieces of concept art that aren't exactly exciting. I don't get it. We were on such a roll for the last year. The video seemed like, well, we have to do something, so here you go. Yeah, so here's another thing to keep in mind as well. That Creative Assembly is like a giant bureaucracy, right? And everything that you are subjected to is basically the marketing department's decision. And I don't know how exactly the marketing department works. All I know is it's an unnecessary appendage of Creative Assembly, basically. Anytime that there's a tweet, it's the marketing department that made that decision. Anytime that there's a trailer, marketing department, right? And like what the marketing department has to do every now and again, they come up with this idea for the those videos. They go, okay, let's get one of these videos out. Let's get these guys away from what they normally do, which is, you know, working on the DLC, and get them to talk about the stuff. But what you don't ever really see is like the face of the marketing of the developers, but you don't see the actual marketers or the people making the decisions aren't the ones front and center with this stuff. And there's usually a bunch of things that they're not allowed to talk about. Like, don't talk about this, don't talk about that, don't talk about this. So they get very limited amount of things they can talk about, and they just have to pad that out as long as they can. Now, I think the reason they do that is because marketing has to justify their own existence, right? So they have to go, well, why should we keep our job if we don't need 20 of us in this building? Well, you need to keep us because we have to keep breadcrumbing the marketing over the next few months. So I think it's a marketing thing, not a developer thing. That the reason why this is all slow and they hold things back to do this, for the most part, I think it's just like really unnecessary. And the marketing department is massively out of touch with the community. And what they need is actually to have a bit more community. Like I was mentioning back here, they used to have like Tom and Wheels. I know Wheels is onto something else. I don't know what Tom is doing. You know, have some of their staff go in and play Total War Warhammer on stream or play Pharaoh on stream. I mean, fucking CA Sophia did that with Pharaoh. And when was the last time that CA got onto a live stream and live streamed the damn game? I can't remember. I haven't been paying attention, but you tell me. When was the last time they did it? I know that CA Sophia did it a fair bit. You know, with Pharaoh, they don't have enough community interaction. I think if they did have community interaction, that people wouldn't be so bloody thirsty when it came to these videos, and they would have been a bit more accepting of the minimal amount of information. Plus, another thing is that they just spent 2 months on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to fucking call it, showcasing titty snakes. It was pathetic. So, yeah, people are hungry for not just marketing. I don't think anyone's excited for marketing. Yeah, give us some more trailers. Why aren't there more trailers? I think what people want is community interaction. Fucking get onto the Reddit, post, get onto YouTube or Twitch or whatever, or you can do both at the same time, and stream the damn game and just talk to the community. Don't tell them what's coming with the DLC, but just talk to them about I don't know, just anything, things that they're interested in about the game, about what they want to play, what they want in their own campaigns, what just things, just talk about things. And I think that sense of community, and you'll stop getting this kind of shit. Because another thing, and maybe another reason why this is happening, is that a lot of content creators are fucking off. I've stopped live streaming. Heir of Carthage is off doing his own thing. There is less community around Total War Warhammer, and so the people that are hungry for it have less to consume. You got to give them more to consume. Let the consumers consume. And in the absence of your free content creators, you're going to have to pay your staff to go and sort it out now. Or not. It's entirely up to you. Or you're just going to keep getting these posts constantly because they're thirsty for it. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And the thing is, the more that you guys request something like this, be like, I want more from Creative Assembly, they will bend to you, because at the end of the day, they want to get your money, and they will do whatever it takes to get it. And you tell them that we want more information in order to pay them. That's what they'll do. So yeah, keep being vocal about what it is you want, and you may end up getting it. Not guaranteed, but you may end up getting it. All right, cool. I think I went through that. But overall, really good discussion going on. I think I went through a balanced amount of like pros and cons of all of this stuff here. I actually don't think that the amount of content is actually less now than what was coming in these. Obviously, bigger DLCs with bigger intervals between it, but when you average it out, it's about the same as what it was getting during Warhammer 2. It's, again, what's lacking is, well, you've got franchise fatigue for one thing, and you've got a severe lack of Creative Assembly's actual like human face, people interaction. It's just not happening anymore. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe one of the reasons that they actually don't want to do that is because the last live stream that Wheels was on, he called Arch Warhammer a dickhead, which was so fucking funny. I mean, don't get me wrong, they shouldn't have done that, but that was so fucking funny. Do you know what the funny thing is as well? They'll go onto a live stream and be like, oh, by the way, Legend of Total War is a dickhead. Oh, that'd be so... please let that happen. Please, that'd be so funny. Oh, that'd be great. Legend of Total War is a dickhead. Oh, I can't wait if they do that. That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be great. I'm looking forward to it if that happens. All right, anyway, that's the end of this one here, guys. I'll leave all the links in the description. Let me know in the comments below as well if you've enjoyed this type of content, me engaging with your discussions. Obviously, I can only do that when there is actual discussions. I'm more than happy to do meme reviews as well, but I just don't find that as interesting as actual discussions about this kind of stuff. But yeah, you guys in the Reddit gave me a lot of perspective with this kind of stuff, and like I said, I no longer feel that the amount of content is actually the problem. It's actually their interaction with the community that's the problem, and just overall franchise fatigue. So I'm fine with that, I guess. Anyway, that's the end of this one. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Appreciate you. I'll see you next time. Later, guys.